Hello and welcome back to you, my friends. So, once again, I have come up on you without any prior notification, and I know it's late. For me, it's 8:42, and I'm on the West Coast, so I know there's a lot of people who may not be able to watch this because it's late at night. Nevertheless, it is being recorded, and so you can, of course, go back and watch this. As it's being archived. So, I wanted to get some time in with you guys and talk to you about Saturn. I've been thinking about this a lot. I'm going to be busy for the next few days, so I thought I'd get it in there before I got too busy with other stuff. So, I'd like for you to ask yourself a question, which is, what do you want in your life? What kind of universe do you want to live in? I'm not asking you what kind of universe you think you live in or what kind of universe you believe you live in. I'm not asking you what you believe about the nature of the universe, whether the earth is flat or round, whether God loves you or hates you, whether you believe in multiple gods or no gods at all. I'm simply asking you, what do you want? So I want you to be thinking about that throughout what we're going to be talking about. And then I want to ask you, what do you remember? And I want you to, as we start talking about some of these things, I want you to see if you can remember. So we're talking about Saturn. Saturn has a lot of names, depending on who you talk to. But universally speaking, everybody recognizes Saturn as a bringer of death. Whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, we all understand that Saturn is a bringer of death. Saturn is Saturn is the bringer of misery. Saturn is the slowest moving of the luminaries in the sky. I'm going to call Saturn a planet, but planet just means traveler. And so Saturn does travel across the sky. What you think about that, traveler, I don't really need to discuss that with you, whether you think it's a round ball of gas or whether you think it's something else, I don't know. Do you believe that Saturn is responsible for keeping you trapped on Earth? Do you believe that Saturn is Jehovah, the God of the Abrahamic tradition? Do you believe that Saturn is Satan? Many people have made the connection because the first three letters are the same, Satan and Saturn. Many people will tell you that there is a conspiracy connected to Saturn and the moon in terms of keeping you trapped on this plane of existence. There's the Saturn moon matrix that people talk about. But regardless of what you believe about Saturn, Saturn is seen as a bringer of misery, a bringer of death. So I'm going to be talking to you about Saturn from my perspective, what I not only know and believe, but what I experience. And it's very likely that I am going to say some things that may go against some of your belief systems. I'm probably going to say some things that will challenge you, it might even anger you. But I don't want that to stop you from listening. In my experiences, one of the negative side effects of being in a challenging relationship with Saturn is that people have a hard time listening. Saturn can make somebody incredibly stubborn. Saturn can make somebody a very powerful warrior. Saturn can also make somebody a serial killer. Saturn can make somebody incredibly peaceful. How can all of these things be part of this one planet that we call Saturn? So I'm going to be sharing with you some of those things as we go along. And always, let's see, do we have, we've got Saeed on the line. Hi Saeed, nice to see you. So like I said, it's pretty likely he won't get a lot of people, so I'll save my little speech about questions and all that, because I'll be right now preaching to the crowd. So let me do something for you which I think is pretty cool, which is, first let me play for you what is purported to be the actual sound that Saturn makes in the sky, the space, whatever you want to talk, or however you want to call it. This is what Saturn actually sounds like, and for me, when I listen to it, it sounds like 1950s space soundtracks, which is kind of interesting, because back in the 1950s, space was this really scary thing. And so traveling into space, or sci-fi movies, there was all this danger and monsters and scary and all that. But I find it interesting that this is almost exactly what this soundtrack sounds like. So that's what Saturn sounds like, according to, I think it was the Cassini spacecraft as it went by and recorded. I don't know how they find that out, because in space there is no sound. So that's a recording of something coming from Saturn. That's what it sounds like. Sounds pretty creepy to me. But let's now talk a little bit about who Saturn was in terms of ancient mythology. Now, there's probably people who will watch this who may have a lot more understanding than I do. I have some understanding from some limited sources, but people would be surprised how far and wide Saturn is. But let's talk about Saturn in terms of the Thunder Wheel, since we're all Thunder Wizards here. So let's take a look at the Thunder Wheel here, and we've got the east and the west directions, and in the east you've got Jupiter, and in the west you've got Saturn. So let's just take a look at that for a brief moment and imagine these two planets in these positions. So let's start from that. For those of you watching this who may be new to what it is that I teach, Thunder Shamanism, Thunder Wizardry, whatever you want to call it, this is where we start. Everywhere we start from starts with this, which is the Thunder Wheel, the 8-sided mandala. You can call it a medicine wheel, you can call it a sun wheel, you can call it whatever you'd like, but this is where we start from. And everything in our cosmos can be found on the thunder wheel. And the directions and the energies and the powers of the directions have a strong connection to the planets, and the planets are placed in specific parts of the thunder wheel. So specifically, the west is the home for Saturn. Now, Saturn is connected to the element of wind. And so in the east, we've got the element of ether. We've got Jupiter and the sun. Actually, Jupiter is in the northeast, but Jupiter has a strong connection to the east as well. And the element of ether is in the east, and that is expansion. That's life force energy. And so when we're talking about life force energy, we're talking about breath, which is the inhalation. When you inhale, you're using the expansive, life-giving energy of the east. And when you exhale, you're contracting your lungs and you're releasing all of the, at least some of the used up oxygen. And so in the west, we have constriction. In the east, we have expansion. In the west, we have constriction. And I find it interesting that Saturn has these rings around it. So even when you look at Saturn, at least what some people say Saturn is, you have this ring that constricts it, that surrounds it. And that's because this is again a connection to the properties of Saturn, which is constriction, which is wind. And this has a strong and powerful connection, and we're going to find a theme here about the place of Saturn and why we have such a negative reaction to it. And this goes back all the way to the beginning. You know, we've got all these pictures here of the god Kronos, which means time. And here we have a picture of from the Greek mythology of Kronos, the Titan, as he's devouring the gods, his own children. So going all the way back to the Greeks, they saw Saturn as this bringer of death. And if, you know, the gods represent the beginnings of life, and in the thunder wheel we put the gods, the celestial deities, in the northeast part of the thunder wheel, which has to do with initiation of life, as life is just coming into manifestation, the purest form of life, the youngest form of life. In fact, it's timeless. The realm of the celestial gods is timeless, which is why it's a fortress. There's only two fortresses in the 9 worlds, and one is Midgard, Middle Earth, where we live. We live in a fortress because human beings and biological life needs a lot of protection from all the energy that's coming from all the other 8 directions. The only other fortress is in Asgard, the fortress of the celestial deities, and they need protection because they live in timelessness. They're the highest vibration of manifested energy as it comes into existence, and so the gods want to protect that. That's why they built a wall around their dwelling, to keep out time. And at the direct opposite of that, we've got the West, which is the fullness of time. So I could get into some of those things, which are very interesting, but I don't know. I don't think I'll do that just yet. So let's talk about some more depictions of Saturn. Let me just read to you from Vedic astrological texts. This is the first thing that you read is that Saturn is the bringer of misery. But let me describe to you what the ancient Vedic astrologers saw about Saturn, how they viewed Saturn. So Saturn is described as long and thin-bodied, yellow, reddish-brown eyes, dry constitution, having large teeth, lazy, tired, crippled in the legs, is harsh, and has bristly, coarse hair. And so if in the East we have the realm of expansive life force energy, the beginnings of life, the springtime, in the West we have the fall, where things are starting to die, we have constriction, and this is exactly what Saturn does. Saturn constricts. So now let's get into some of the modern mythology surrounding Saturn. There's a lot of people talking about how Saturn is used by alien forces in order to keep us trapped, to keep us prisoner. And a lot of talk about how Saturn uses karma, which is used as an excuse to keep human beings trapped, so that these beings which are closely connected to Saturn can suck out the life force energy of human beings. It sounds a lot like this. Because that is exactly how we experience Saturn. We experience the forces of Saturn as constricting, as something that keeps us from experiencing life, that keeps us trapped. In somebody's chart, people are very afraid of Saturn. They call Saturn the worst malefic. And so if Saturn is poorly placed, or if Saturn has a lot going on in terms of Vedic astrology, then people will be unhealthy. They might have disease, they will be miserable, they will be poor. Saturn is also strongly connected to the servant class. So Saturn is a very, very harsh planet in terms of just about astrology. But Saturn has a strong connection to other deities and other traditions. In the northern tradition, Saturn would be representative of the serpent called Jormungandr, the world serpent. And as it so happens, Jormungandr surrounds the planet Earth very similarly to the rings that surround Saturn. And Thunar, or Thor, is constantly fighting with Jormungandr. And in fact, he tries to kill Jormungandr numerous times, and there's a myth where he takes him out of the ocean. Also, there's a strong connection to the ocean, and the god Njord is connected to Saturn as well. In fact, the god Njord could be Saturn, just the northern tradition version of the god Saturn. And so what happens is that Saturn, in its constrictive capacity, actually gives specificity, because without it, there wouldn't be any universe. There wouldn't be any up or down or here or there. In order for me to experience life as a human being, I have to be incarnated in limited fashion, which Saturn has a strong connection to. And so I have to be incarnated in this three-dimensional meat bag, which doesn't live forever. As healthy as I like to think I am, I still I still get wrinkles, and you can tell I'm not 25 years old. And as in good shape and as strong as I am, I like to take a lot more naps these days than I did when I was 20. I don't know if that's true or not. I think maybe I'm just smart enough. You get old, after you get to a certain age, you realize, it's no fun working yourself to death, and relaxation is a good thing. But then again, there's the effect of Saturn. Saturn is the slowest moving planet. And so when Saturn comes into your chart, the effects of it are going to be very long. It's not going to be short-lived. So in the myths, we have Thor, who fights with Jormungandr, and what this represents is that Thor represents life force energy, the eastern direction, lightning and thunder. This is energy that's coming into manifestation, and specifically has to do with the creation of the identity, the self. This is who I am. That's what's going on in the eastern direction, in the giant home. That's why Thor is in the giant home, because if we expand too much, if we get too involved, then we destroy things. So Thor brings balance to that. But Thor, not only does he fight the giants in the east, he also fights Jormungandr. And Jormungandr has a strong connection to the west, the constrictive power. So here's sort of typical. I don't know when this was painted, but here's at least it's a free thing I can use for free on the internet of Thor fighting Jormungandr. What he's doing is, this is the myth where he fishes him out of the ocean, and with his hammer he's conking him on the head trying to kill him, but he just can't. But what he can do is he can keep that limiting force of death away. He can put it at bay, at least for now. So there's that picture right here. And if I remember the myth correctly, at the end of this age, in Ragnarok, one of the first things that happens is Jormungandr is set free, and he begins to froth, and the waves of the ocean tend to froth. Ocean has a strong connection to emotions that it's not just emotions. Like feeling emotions, it's being overwhelmed by emotions, especially deep unconscious emotions that are brought to the surface. This is why we are afraid of drowning. In dreams, when we dream of drowning, what we're really dreaming about is being overwhelmed by our deep instinctual emotions. So this is one of the things that happens. We lose that ability, which is what Asgard does. Asgard in the northeast has the direct connection to the southwest, if you take a look at it here. The southwest would be the deep unconscious, and so the purpose of the gods is to bring this fresh, new, inspiring energy to keep all of the scary stuff in our unconscious mind from bubbling up into our world. So the end of the world is that constriction that keeps everything together is now jarred loose. And so this is what we don't understand about Saturn. And what, again, I asked in the beginning, I want you to think about what it is that you want, not what you believe to be true, even if what you believe to be true is horrible. If you believe that this universe is a horrible place and that it's filled with all kinds of monsters and aliens and evil entities that are trying to keep you trapped, you can hold on to that belief. There's some truth to that belief. But I want to ask you, what do you want? Do you want to be free? Or is there something that keeps us connected to wanting to be trapped? And what does that have to do with our beliefs? How we experience this limiting force that actually gives three-dimensional reality a place for us to experience life. Because remember, we are souls. We are infinite. I'm touching my heart here because this is the middle self, where the soul, the eternal self, who I identify with and who you identify with your soul. This is where it dwells. But if this soul is released from this limited meat bag here, it goes back to infinity. And as blissful and wonderful as infinity is, you can't learn anything. It gets kind of boring. So you have to have some fun. So the way that you create fun is with challenge. And this is what I'm going to introduce to you, that this is one of the purposes of Saturn. Without that constriction, there's nothing to keep this experience together. The problem comes in when we have such a strong association with all of the negative aspects to constriction that that's all we see. And so I want to be talking to you about how to free yourself from being a slave, free yourself from being constricted, free yourself from misery, because that is what Saturn brings when we experience it. And before it's too late, I guess I want to tell you, one of the main things I want to share with people is that in my work, especially when I do people's Vedic astrological charts, I find that the majority of people who have very strong conspiracy tendencies, who see the universe through conspiracies, whether it's uh, the Saturn Moon matrix, or whether it's seeing the devil everywhere, or seeing that there's no God, or whatever it is. My experience is that these people have a very strong force of Saturn in their charts. And what that tells me is that in a past life, or maybe in numerous past lives, these people have run into problems with authority figures, whether that be the government or whether that be a father figure or something. Many of these people have been imprisoned. Maybe they've been tortured, they've been put to death, they've been martyred. When I see this in somebody's chart and I start to ask them, you remember in the beginning I asked you if you could remember. When I start really taking a look at it and I start kind of touching on this, then they start to, at the very least, have a sense, an intuition that something happened to them in a past life. That when they look at things like, even in movies, when people being burned at the stake or being tortured or being put into prison, you have a very strong reaction, and you relate to it. And when this happens, this means that you are going to have a negative reaction to what Saturn really is. And I'm going to get into that. But we get so hyper focused on the negative aspect, then we tend to recreate it. Because here's the thing about Saturn. Saturn is the heaviest of the planets. It's the slowest force in the universe. And trying to fight against the powers that be, especially in a karmic sense, is like trying to stop a boulder. Once that boulder gets moving, it's very hard to stop. And so when we fight against our negative karmic experiences and focus on them, it's like trying to stop a boulder. It's going to crush you every time. And it's going to crush you mercilessly. And in fact, there are things that we can do to increase that experience of Saturn just crushing us. Or, as in some of these pictures, Saturn becoming the devil or devouring us. So those are, I guess, my introduction into this whole Saturn thing here. So I'm going to get into some things about Saturn, but I do want to open it up for questions. If I haven't even looked to see how many people we got here, so I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions. But before I do that, while I'm looking at questions and thinking about where I want to go next, I'm going to do some business. I just started, by the way, a new service. It's called the Transformation Package. For those of you who haven't had either a Vedic astrological reading or a 9-world rune reading or a shamanic North Star reading, I put this all into one package, and I'm going to be giving that out throughout the summer for anybody who likes it. So I'm going to do a little business while I think of what to talk about next, and I'll take a look at your questions if there are any. Okay, so I didn't see any questions in there. I do see some people on there, so thank you for being part of this tonight. All right, so now I want to start talking to you about what Saturn really is. And remember in the beginning when I said what I want you to do is to remember. That's the most important thing. One of the things that happens with people who have had a strong connection to Saturn in past lives is that we tend to forget, except for all of the difficult things. We remember that something bad happened to us, something horrible happened to us, but we don't remember what, and that's a survival instinct. And let me just share with you my personal experience with this. Those of you who follow what I teach now, I really try to teach a very, not to sound new agey, but a very life-affirming viewpoint of the universe. Specifically that you are God, you are everything, and that everything in your life is your own projection, positive or negative. So let me start with that. Okay, so let's start with that. In order to have any conversation with anybody, whether that's me or whether that's the Christian pastor down the street, or the Satanist down the way, or the terrorist, or the politician, or the professor, whoever you talk to, in order to have a deep conversation, you have to at the very least know what the assumption is, the shared assumption. And many times people are fighting and miscommunicating because they don't even realize that there is such a thing as having a shared assumption in a conversation. And I use this example a lot, which is if a born-again Christian were to come up to me and want to share the gospel with me, they would have an assumption that the Bible is true, that Jesus saves human beings from hell, that hell exists, that everybody is going to hell, and so that's their assumption, right? And so what most people do is they get into arguments with them about the wrong things. They want to talk about what Jesus meant when he said this, or what is sin, or those kinds of things, and that's not the place to go. You have to start with addressing the assumptions. So when Christians, they don't, because I don't want that in my life, but if they were and they were to want to talk to me about Jesus, the first thing that I would do, and I did this years ago when I used to engage with them, the first thing that I would do is I would stop them and I'd say, listen, in order for us to communicate, we have to understand that I don't have the same beliefs as you. So I'm not interested in what the Bible says, because I don't believe the Bible as a source of truth like you do. So don't waste any time quoting the Bible to me. Don't talk to me about Jesus. I don't believe he existed. Until we can find a place where you and I agree on, then we can talk. And it would never work because they always wanted to come and impose their assumption. Because once you buy into their assumption, whether you do that consciously or whether you do that reluctantly, then you're trapped in this never-ending circuitous nonsense. But if they understand that I'm never going to look at the Bible and have any kind of discussion with them about the Bible, they have nothing to talk about. So when you listen to everything I say, whether or not you agree where I come from, it's helpful to understand what my assumption is. And here's my assumption. My assumption is that we are self-generated and self-created. We are conscious through our own self-evolution. And not only are we destined to be God or gods or however you want to look at it, we already are that. We already are able to create everything we want. The next question of that is, well, then how come I'm not a millionaire? How come I'm not this, that, or the other thing? The reason for that is that connected to that assumption is another assumption that I have, which is that our souls are what is our true essence. Our infinity is our souls. our souls come into manifestation, come into incarnated form with a pre-programmed desire. Now, this is a desire that wasn't given to you by anything else, not by God or anything else. You put it there yourself. Before you incarnated into the body that you're in now, you crafted a program that you wanted to live out. Now, here's another part of the assumption. You also wanted it to be fun. Being that you're infinite and all-powerful, becoming an avatar and creating whatever you want is very easy to do, but there's no fun in that because it's too easy. So you put in there some constriction, which makes things difficult, and what that does is that forces you to bump into challenges, and the challenges that you bump into are designed to do one thing. Those challenges are designed to steer you back to what it is you truly want. So the question of, well, then why am I not a millionaire? Why am I not this? Because that's not what you want. I mean, how many celebrities do I have to go, list off whose lives are miserable, who have money, fame, respect, anything that or athletes, anything you think that would make somebody happy, how many of them are miserable? So that obviously isn't what gives you happiness. What gives you happiness is when you follow your true path. Now, here's where the infinity comes in. And so the constriction of challenges, the constriction of Saturn, is trying to focus you to realize the few things within you that you really, really do want. And when you align yourself with those desires, then what happens is now you have infinite power to project and create that. And in my experience, not only in my own life, but in everybody that I've worked with, when people are pessimistic or sad or angry or bitter about all the things that haven't happened in their lives, it's simply because they didn't go after them. And I'll give you an example. One of the things that I've learned about myself is when I get angry about what somebody else is doing, especially if I feel jealous, and I do, trust me, I get jealous of other people. I'm human. Here's the thing about spirituality. All of these things that we think are sins are actually programmed to help us get the most out of this. If you want to call it a game or a matrix, it's programmed to help us get the most out of it. But the challenge is not to get trapped in them. So, for instance, one of the reasons I'm doing this work is that as a younger man, I would see spiritual teachers, and I would see them doing things that either were outright destructive, or I would see them making mistakes or doing things wrong, and I would start judging them about, that guy doesn't know what he's doing, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And then I go, well, wait a second. Why am I wasting my energy on this? And then I realized the reason I'm mad is because I want to do that. And so now what I do is when I feel that, I go, oh, I must be fated to do that, meaning I must have programmed that in me. I'll give you another example. I was an actor when I was much younger, and early on in my acting career, I went to the Improv here in LA, which is a very famous comedy club, and this was in its heyday, and I remember who came in? Robin Williams came in, and he did something, and some other guy came in. And I'm watching that and I'm thinking, they're not very good. And then I started getting jealous. Those guys suck. They don't know what they're doing. And I had never done stand-up. I've always been, I don't know, you probably don't know, but I've always been a funny guy. I'll do all kinds of characters and voices, and that was my thing as an actor. And so I'm watching these people and I'm like, what, they really stink. And then I stopped and I went, what? I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to go do it. If I think it's that easy and I think I can do it better than they are, then I'm going to go do it. And I did. And I was stand-up for years, and I sabotaged that. I could have gone on to Vegas and all kinds of stuff. And I was too much of an artist for blah, blah, blah. But I learned something. In that moment, I learned that when I'm jealous and when I'm angry, it means that I'm supposed to do that. So whenever that happens, I go, you know what, I'm not going to waste time being angry. I'm going to go do that. It's because you're angry because part of you is saying, this is something I know something about. This is something that gives me joy, and so I'm going to go do it. And then you get it out of your system, or you find out that it's where you belong. I was talking with somebody on the phone today, and through the conversation was about what should you do, and and I was explaining how everything that I'm doing here, this whole thunder path, all of the ways that I'm teaching, all of these teachings are a result of me going through those same processes. I mean, nobody's doing this. I don't have a degree in thunder wizardry. There's no place where I could have gone and gotten a degree or gotten some kind of certificate or something like that to be doing this. It all came from me because I wanted to. I had this desire to pull together from different traditions. When I saw that teachers were lacking in wisdom or lacking in understanding, then instead of judging them, I said, then it's my job to fill in the blanks. And now I have this really unique thing, and somewhere out of nowhere I have people following me, and they call me teacher and Sifu and all that other stuff, and whatever that is, whatever it is. But the point is that this is what we're designed to do. So that is my assumption, that we are infinite, we are self-evolved, and that we've chosen to come here, and that we have programmed within us very specific desires that when we follow them will bring us total fulfillment. And as long as we are in alignment with our desires, we have infinite power to project everything that we want. So, all right, now, Saturn. Where does Saturn come in? That is something we can get into, but before I do that, let me take a look and see what's going on in terms of if there's any questions. So, before I launch into that, if you're new to the channel, the best way to communicate with me is through questions. The worst way to communicate with me is if you want to spout your opinion. You're free to do that, but just be aware that if you put it in there and I see something I don't agree with, I'm going to pick it apart because I want to show you the truth. So the best thing to do is to ask me what I think, and then I'll share my opinion, and then you can agree with it or not agree with it on your own time. Does that make sense? So let's take a look and see what's going on here. Questions. Okay. So Black Earth Productions, hello. Amani Hassan, hi, this is Amani from Kuwait. Hi, Amani. Yeah, Black Earth has had some experiences with Saturn and understands the negative side of that. If I'm correct, I think you're a Western astrologer. I'm a Vedic astrologer, so I know very little about Western astrology. Okay, Yasser Maniram says, going back to what you said about the fortress of Asgard keeping time out, are those within aware of the passage of time outside? I hadn't thought of it like that. The people in Asgard are the celestial deities. So you have to understand that time is a construct. I'm not going to say time doesn't exist. It does. But there are dimensions where time doesn't exist. And Asgard is one of those dimensions. Time does not exist there. So, if we were to go to Asgard and we spend what feels like, 10 minutes, it could be 10,000 years or it could be 10 milliseconds in terms of our time. In fact, I've had experiences like that. I talked about it on this last one where I had a dream. You know that your dreams, you experience a lot in a much faster time period. You know, we think we're having this huge dream, but it might have been, you know, a second. But I remember dreaming one night an entire lifetime. And I was born, I lived. I mean, it was an entire lifetime, a lifetime full of experiences. And then I died, and then I woke up. And I woke up back up in this body, and it was like I had to get back into it. And I had to remember what this timeline was all about. So they're not thinking of it like that. That question sounds like, what if you took a normal person and put them in there, would they know how time went? And they don't care. They're not interested in time like we are. In fact, that's why they fight. The Asgardians, the Aesir, fight with the Vanir, the gods of the earth, because the gods of the earth operate within time. The gods of fertility operate within time. And so that's why they fight with them, because the Aesir don't like time, because time brings decay and death, which again is Saturn. And so they don't like that, so that's why they fight against it. So this is the dynamic balance of the universe. Anyway, that was a good question. Thank you for that. Please check your email that starts with info. I put a question there. Please check it. I will. I haven't looked at it, so I don't know what your question is. The best way to ask questions about the work or the videos is to put it here. If you're asking about working with me, then you can ask that. But I usually reserve email questions for clients. So just to let you know. Okay. Black Earth Production says everything in the universe is neutral. The planets, that consciousness, the energies can either be used on the upverse or on the inverse principle. Would you agree, man? Yeah, I would agree. I think, yeah, generally speaking, I agree with that. What I want to eventually get to is to start talking about how Saturn can really work for you. And how, yeah, I agree that it's a force. And I believe that all of the well, according to Vedic astrology, all of the planets are actually called graha. Planet means traveler, graha means grasper. And it has to do with we are grasping at something. We're trying to get something out of our lives, whether, out of illusion or out of connection to our true desires. And so the planets are merely reflecting to us and stimulating or reacting to our attachments and desires and things. So they don't call them planets, they call them grahas. And it has everything to do with that. And so, yeah, let's talk about karma, for example. Now, karma is directly associated with Saturn. In fact, Saturn can be said to be the agent of karma. Karma literally means work. I think it's connected to the root for arm. It means work. But when we use the word karma, it's almost always associated with something negative. Negative karma or bad karma or, karma, dude. And it's not negative or positive. It's just simply the law of action and reaction. When you do something, something's going to happen as a result of that. You think something, something's going to happen as a result of that. So you're going to have challenging karma, meaning you've acted in a way that... See, I don't want to sound like a Bible thumper here or a Christian, so understand I'm not making any judgment, because we're supposed to. We're supposed to push the boundaries so that we can learn and grow. We're supposed to fall down. All of this stuff is supposed to happen. We've engineered it that way so that we can have more fun. Because again, it's no fun if everything is easy. Who cares about that? It's fun when it's a challenge. So here's another thing. Those of you who have had very challenging lives, you've seen a lot of misery. Understand from the soul's perspective, those are things that give you a greater appreciation and understanding, and your soul enjoys the game. And in between lives, when we come out of this body and we look back on that life like we do a video game, we might have had a lot of difficulty, but the soul goes, oh, wow, I missed the little special thing. Oh, I should have done, oh, all right, I want to go back in. And it chooses to put those challenges so it's fun, makes it hard. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, but I sort of lost my train of thought. Anyway, yeah, essentially I do agree with you. Let's see, Demetrius Dragon Slayer. So, Thunder Wizard, much love for all the great content and knowledge. Thank you, sir. I wonder if those of us, Alicia Cole says, I wonder if those of us whose life path is to train animals are trying to understand and master our own subconscious emotions, seeing as they operate on primarily a subconscious and emotional plane. It sounds like as good a theory as any. You know, I know that that horses, I know you work with horses, and I was thinking about the Ehwaj rune, the horse rune, and that horses are so intuitive, and that's the rune of intuition and trust. And when you have that bond, you know, animals have that. You know, and animals animals can see energy on a level that not a lot of humans can. You know, I remember my when I was married, my ex-wife had dogs. They were my dogs too, I suppose. And I remember the dogs would be sitting on the other side of the room, wagging their tail and panting and very happy. And all I would do is I would just think, without doing anything, I would just sort of intend. You know, I would think about something like maybe kind of a violent thought or something. And I would just sort of just let that thought kind of creep in. And the dogs, I wouldn't do anything differently. The dogs would start growling and they'd start backing away, like as if some dark cloud had come over me. So, yeah, I think that animals have a lot to teach us, and so that would probably mean that you have a strong connection on that level. So you probably have a very powerful subconscious projector. All right, so Shannon O'Donnell says, damn, I never thought of jealousy, anger that way. Great example. Thank you. The difference is 21.3 degrees between the Vedic and Western. Yeah, there's one. That's one of the big ones, but there's at least 2 or 3 others that create differences between them. That's one of them. Black Earth says Saturn has been a blessing in context to all. I agree. I got that. That's what you were saying. When I was going through things, though, it was the hardest times in my life, and have been a part of what has shaped me into the man I am now. Saturn has taught me the value of hard work. Yes, so Saturn, from a Vedic astrological perspective, is connected to the servant class, the working class. And so you can tell, you know, how people connect to work, you know, in terms of Saturn. Okay. All right, let's see what else comes up. Let's see. I have the Moon Augustine says, I have the feeling that constriction I'm experiencing comes from my unconscious mind getting in the way. Is it possible to work somehow with Saturn to help with that? What a great question. And yes, that's absolutely correct. I agree with that. Saturn is going to have an extremely strong connection with the unconscious mind. Saturn in the Vedic, one of the gods, the deities for Saturn is Kali. So let's talk about Kali for a moment, the goddess Kali. I wish I had a picture. The picture that I showed you here is a depiction of the male aspect of Kali, which is Mahakala. So understand that we in the West have a completely different understanding, perhaps a lack of understanding of what symbolism means. This picture here isn't something I grabbed out of nowhere. I think this is a Tibetan depiction of the god Mahakala, which is the male emanation of Saturn, and it looks like this. So if you've seen the pictures of Mother Kali, you know, sometimes people get Kali and Tara confused, but Kali is very dark, black skin, huge pendulous belly, sagging, drooping, enormous breasts, and she wears a necklace of skulls, and in her mouth is blood, and blood is coming out of her mouth, and she has this very fearsome look on her face, and so she's an incredibly frightening looking deity when you see her in that form. But that form is how we perceive Saturn when we are attached to our unconscious attachments. So again, let's go back to the assumption that I'm giving, which is that if we're following our, and we're in alignment with our soul desire, then we're able to project infinitely what it is that brings us true satisfaction, as opposed to false satisfaction. But if we get caught up in any kind of misunderstanding, like one of the reasons we don't remember, we choose not to remember when we incarnate, is because if we remembered, we would just follow that. We would know what to do. So when we forget, we get into limitation, and limitation brings fear. And when we operate from fear, then we make an assumption. So the assumption that fear says is that I'm not going to be protected, or I'm not going to be given what I need, or I'm not going to be loved, or whatever it is that you need or want. You operate from an assumption that you're not going to get it, and that forces are against you. When you do that, you start acting in ways that ultimately drain you of energy. You steal, you lie, even if it's on an unconscious level. Let me give you an example of this. I used to say this a lot, and some people wouldn't understand. But one of the things I don't like people pleasers, like people that just kiss your rear end, you know, because it's not real. Just be real with me. And I used to say things like, I'm not talking about people being nice to me. I like people being nice to me. I like it a lot. But when somebody's coming at you and they're not authentic with whatever it is they're trying to do, and you get this sense, what is it this person wants from me? What are they trying to get? I have a hard time with that. But we live in a culture, a very codependent culture, where people are taught to be nice all the time, and people are taught to be happy all the time. This is why we have a lot of passive-aggressive people. People with a smile on their face who throw out a compliment, and somehow you walk away and you go, wait a minute, that compliment doesn't feel very good. That feels like a put-down. This is coming from fear. Fear that we're not going to be loved, or we're not going to get what we want, or whatever. And I used to say to people when I was younger, I used to say, I would much rather have somebody come and put a gun to my face and say, give me your money, than to come up and kiss my rear end. People go, why would you want that? That's so weird. I said, because at least that guy's being honest. I don't like it's not okay. It doesn't make you a nice person just because you put a smile on your face. Hi, how are you? Bugs me. So that's one example. You go off. That's another way you're operating from fear, because you need people's approval. You need people to like you. You need people to think of you a certain way. You don't, and I guess when I really think about it, the thing that bothers me about it is because I have this, and this is again part of my path in life, I have this intense desire to see people be empowered and believe in themselves for themselves. Go after something because you want it. Be it because you want to be it, not because somebody else is telling you to be it. Don't try and find out what you think I want you to be and try and kiss my rear end so that I'll see you that way. I don't want that. I want you to be you. Even if you don't like me, I want you to be you. I'm empowered when that happens. So that's my negative. That's part of the negative thing that I've had to learn, is that I can't be so upset with people just trying to be people and making mistakes in their own ways. And anyway, so I've learned a lot. But I forgot what my question was, or what my point was. As is my wont, I ranted on and on. Working with Saturn. So yeah, here's how you work with Saturn. Now I can actually say something of value here. Working with Saturn. Here's how you work with Saturn. Saturn's job is to get you to learn the lesson. So let's say, for example, let's use that same assumption that if we go off of our true internal programming that we've put in there out of fear, out of some kind of fear. We go off and let's say somebody becomes a thief. And you're a thief because you believe the universe isn't going to provide you what you need. And so since the universe won't provide you what you need, you have to go and steal it from others. Now, doing that is going to rob you of a lot of energy. Because let's just, from a practical perspective, again, I'm very practical when it comes to this. The Abrahamic tradition will say it's a sin to steal it because it's wrong, because Jehovah says blah, 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 and so you're sinning, and then Jehovah is angry with you because you stole. Well, the reason why you shouldn't steal is because you're stealing your own energy, you're leaking energy every time you do it, because when you steal, now you have a lie. But you got to have a lie in your head, because if somebody asks you, you've got to have that comeback. So you have this energy that's now it's like RAM on your computer. It's now being taken up in keeping that lie going in the back of your head, or being ready to, if somebody catches you in a lie, to be able to bounce back. So that's a bunch of energy that you're using. You're going to feel guilty. It's just the way it is. When you know that you've done that, you're going to feel guilty. And that makes people angry. By the way, whenever you feel guilty, it just means you're angry. Guilty people are angry. And they're angry at those that they feel guilt towards. Because what they really want to do is justify why they're doing what they're doing. So whether you deserve the guilt or not, you're angry at somebody. So all that anger takes up a bunch of energy. So that's constantly robbing you of energy. And again, once you start doing something like that, then it's hard to stop, and then it just creates this whole chain of events where it just starts sucking up all of your energy. So from a practical perspective, that's why it's destructive. So Saturn is saying, hey, hang on here, man. You're a divine individual, and here's all this stuff you've done to take your energy away. So until you remember that, I'm going to be that opposing force that's going to oppose you in this. So now we get into more subtle things. What Saturn does, the job of Saturn, is to remind you that you are here to fulfill your own destiny. So if Saturn were to come out and say, Saturn would say, hey, listen, I know I'm being harsh with you, but you told me to do this. You told me to remind you that you're out of alignment with your true happiness. My only job is to give you happiness. The word for Saturn in Vedic astrology is Shani. And Shan, the root word Shang, means peace. In fact, it's the same root for Shanti, which means peace. So Saturn actually wants to give peace, not misery or destruction. And so it's what we're really doing when we fight against our karma, is that we are fighting against the built-in program that is trying to say, hang on, I want to give you life and peace. So if somebody wants to live eternally, they should worship Saturn. Because Saturn will say, okay, here are all the ways that you're working against your energy leakage, holding on to your energy. Here are all the ways that you're acting in ways which drain you of energy, which will kill you. So that's why we see Saturn as the bringer of death, because if we are attached to any kind of misunderstanding about our alignment with our true selves, then we are going to experience Saturn as this punisher who comes and punishes us. But once you get in alignment and you understand the lesson, then Saturn goes, that's all I wanted. I just wanted you to understand the lesson. And then Saturn leaves you alone. Not only does Saturn leave you alone, but Saturn helps you. If Saturn is placed in certain ways in somebody's chart, they can be king of the world, they can be a billionaire, whatever it is. They can have all kinds of blessings. But the main fruit of working with Saturn is peace. And it's a deep, abiding peace, because again, Saturn is very slow moving. So it's this peace that doesn't get dislodged. You know, I knew a guy, one of my apprentices, and he had very strong Saturn in his chart. In fact, he looked like Saturn. He was big and big bodied guy, and he moved very slowly. But when he meditated, he would go right into that place of emptiness. No, I can't do that. I have to do all kinds of movement. I have to do martial arts, or I have to do qigong, or I have to do mantra, or I have to do, when I get my energy moving in a certain way, then I get into that peaceful state. I have to work for it. But he couldn't. He didn't have to do that. He would go right in, and he'd be out for as long as he wanted. He'd be meditating for an hour, 2 hours, and then I'd bring him out of it, and he'd like, how long was I out? That's Saturn. That's the kind of peace that Saturn gives. So, anyway, I don't know if I answered your question or not, but I like that, how to work with Saturn. The other answer to that question is, if I look at your chart, I can tell you what Saturn deities work with, specifically what the first syllable is of the deity's name. So, for instance, in my chart, the syllables that work with me in terms of deity worship are A, E, I, Au. That's why I work with Odin instead of Woden. That's why I work with Indra and Indrani and Iduna and Angaraka and Anjanaya, because that first syllable wants to work with me. So when I look at somebody's chart, I can see which Saturn deities they want. So if somebody comes to me and says, I want to learn how to work with Saturn, I can find out which deity. So for me, Kali, even though Kali is a Saturn deity, the first syllable of Ka is not the most easily accessible syllable for me to work with. And I did a lot of work with Kali. And I had some amazing experiences, but I'll give you an example. I've talked about this. I was doing a Kali mantra, and I went up, this is when I lived in Idaho, and I went up into the mountains, and up there you could drive down logging roads for a really long time and be out in the middle of nowhere. And so I would do that because I grew up hiking the Sierra Nevadas up here, and I liked being in the middle of nowhere. But I'd be out there, and I'd start doing my Kali mantra, and a forest fire would erupt. And that I'd be breathing smoke, and I'd have to get in my car and drive. So I'd drive 100 miles in another direction. I'd go up another mountainside. I'd do the same thing. Another fire erupted. Everywhere I went, I had to come home. I think 3 different fires chased me home. And I was smelling smoke, and this was like weeks afterwards, and I was smelling smoke coming out of my nose, and I had my wife sniff. I just barely exhaled out my nose, and she said, yeah, I can smell it. So Kali gave me a lot. Kali, I was talking with somebody, and I found myself out of nowhere ranting and raving about how sacred and holy women's time of the month was, and do you understand this sacrifice they are making with their blood? And it wasn't me talking, but I learned the hard way that working with Kali for me is going to bring up a lot of intensity and a lot of challenge. So you have to know this if you're going to want to work with Saturn especially. You've got to know what that is. So anyway, if somebody wants to work with Saturn, do a ritual to Saturn. I can also tell how Saturn wants to be worshipped, which direction you want to face, which element to use, that kind of stuff. That's all in your Vedic chart. So if you want to learn that, let me know. See what else. Saturn likes worship, by the way. All right, so let's see here. Shannon O'Donnell, I think, is saying some nice things about, I don't know if that's about me or somebody else's videos, but if it's about me, thank you. Aman Hassani, do we really have to be vegetarian in order to strongly connect with our infinite source truth? I never said that. I know a lot of people teach that, but I never said that. No, I in fact I don't do that. I'm not, I mean I could if I wanted to. I could be vegetarian or vegan, but I would have to eat tons and tons of like vegetarian protein powder. So instead I eat a lot of fish and chicken. I don't do red meat for health reasons, but no, absolutely you don't have to. That's one of the myths connected to Saturn and all that that I don't buy it. Now that doesn't mean you shouldn't if you want to. Go ahead. I said this earlier. I've known a lot of vegans and vegetarians, and I've seen them as they get older. You know, they've been vegans or vegetarians for 20 or 30 years, and they end up having to become pescatarians because they can't get. They become anemic, and there are certain enzymes that they can't get. You can only get with animal flesh. Yasir Maniram says, factoring Saturn as part of our free will to experience challenge, will the challenge ever be more than we can bear, or does that threshold depend on our mindset? I'm not sure I know how to answer that question because that kind of, it reminds me a lot of Abrahamic stuff like, you know, I learned in church where God will never give you more than you can handle. You know, my experience is that it's never more than you can handle, but then another aspect is we're infinite. So we can handle infinity. You know, I don't want to put that in there because I want to live in a universe where I decide what I want to create. So if I can create infinite bliss and awareness, maybe I can create infinite negativity, destruction. What I can tell you is that misery is optional. It doesn't mean we won't have difficulty, and it doesn't mean we won't have tremendously challenging experiences. But choosing to be miserable is an option. We can always choose to, you know, and it's even gotten to the point where a lot of times I can just choose. If I start going into a really bad place, I'm not talking about denial. I'm not talking about everything's fine, I'm happy. I talked about those people before. I hate that. No, there's been times when I go, you know what, I don't want to invest in that. And it actually has had an effect and changes me. I also know if I focus on what I want, that also tends to change me. Even if it puts me in a warrior mode of I'm going to go after and get what I want. It gets me out of it. In fact, I've been through some very challenging things the past 6 months, which seem to be shifting. And let's continue to project that that's what happens. It was very difficult, very challenging, and I worked with Mars. The warrior aspect really kept me going through that, kept me going. So we can fight through anything. Loki has a close connection to Saturn, but Loki is actually Rahu, the planet Rahu, the north node of the moon. But they have a strong connection, so you're right about that. I always seen Saturn as a void trying to elevate you. That's a great. I couldn't have put it. See, you're a great writer. That's brilliant. I haven't heard that before. You should patent that phrase right there. Use that in something. That's brilliant. Gasser Maniram, Loki seems more of a trickster with intent to disrupt. That's kind of true. We can talk about Loki another time, but that's kind of true. Arjo, can Odin be a spirit guide? Yes. A psychic told me this, but I watched a YouTube video where they channeled Odin, and he is with the Council of One, and said, how do I know they channeled Odin? I don't know that. You know what? I'm not going to analyze or criticize somebody else's experience because I wasn't there. So, to answer your question, can Odin be a spirit guide? Sure, absolutely. All right, so that was a bunch of good questions. All right, we are we're past an hour, but I'm not quite done talking yet. So I'm going to do a little bit of business here while I think a little bit about what I want to say next. You can take this time to write more questions if you want. for those of you who are new to this channel, or don't work with me in any other capacity, there is a lot of other ways that you can not only connect with me but work with videos. There are videos that I put out that are only for people who have chosen to work with me on a more intimate level, and that is found at thunderwizard.com. You can subscribe at multiple levels if you want. You can get access to private videos that only those people in the Master Shamanism class get, and I start from the very beginning. People contact me all the time. I want to learn shamanism. Well, I teach from the very beginning, from the very ground up, how to start. Remember, like I said, you have to start with an assumption. You have to start with a foundation. And from there, once you get the basics of the foundation, you can build on that. So a lot of these things are more advanced and it's kind of hard. But once you build on that foundation, then you can really grow. So that's we're going to talk about that. And also take a look at transformation.thunderwizard.com. I'm right now doing a special where I'm putting together 3 of my most powerful and popular services together. And anyway, you get huge savings with that. If you were to do all 3 of these things, it would cost a pretty penny, but I'm giving it for like 75% off of what I would charge on a normal basis. Anyway, so I'm going to do some ads right now and think about what I want to say. Go ahead and add some questions. Okay, so now I want to talk to you about Saturn and conspiracies. As I said in the very beginning, my experience working with people from a Vedic astrological perspective is that a lot of the people that I've worked with who lean towards conspiracy theories, whether it be the reptilian conspiracy theory, whether it's the Saturn moon matrix, whether it's the matrix, the flat earth conspiracy, I mean, just pick it, regardless of what side you're on, whether you're on the, people who find the conspiracies with big business or big pharma or insurance companies, or they find conspiracies with liberal political agendas. Regardless of what your conspiracy leaning is, if somebody's operating from that perspective, and I'm one, I've been there, so I'm not judging. What I found is that they have intense Saturn in their chart. Now that's a tough place to be. When you have Saturn in your chart that is really trying to work to bring the lesson to you, and you are fighting that, it's going to feel like you are trapped. It's going to, everything you can come up with, whether it's demon possession or insanity, or like I said, extremism, or serial killers, or, we could go down the list. Saturn is the one, depending on how Saturn is placed, you can see where people could really go off the deep end. And again, the point of that, as somebody has mentioned, is that Saturn is trying to say, hey, I'm trying to get your attention about something you asked me to remind you of. So if you've got really intense Saturn going on in your life, it's because Saturn is ruthlessly going to make sure that you learn that lesson. Until you do choose to learn that lesson, then Saturn will become increasingly harsh. So again, let's go back to Kali. I remember what I wanted to say about Kali. Was that the reason why Kali looks so fierce is because when somebody sees that coming at her, whether it's, my experience as a younger man was I would close my eyes and I'd see this skeleton woman, like looking at me. It was just the most frightening thing. I'd see it. I'd close my eyes and I'd see it. But that was when I was going through my greatest healing. That's when I really got my life together on a bunch of different levels. I had a really tough, I won't get into it, but I had a really messed up childhood. And to get through that, I had to have that harsh Saturn influence on me, just not letting me go. If I veered from it, I paid the price big time. And so that's the thing about Saturn. Saturn is the judge. Saturn is but it's really just you. You have set, judgments for yourself. If you veer off of your true path that brings you the greatest joy, you have set within your own life, you have dialed in Saturn a certain way to have that experience for you. And so once you learn the lesson, Saturn is programmed to go, oh, that's it. There you go. That's what I wanted. You did what I wanted. Good. And then you get peace. You get understanding. You get awareness. So here's the thing about if you get into the conspiracy mindset, it doesn't matter what anybody says. Even if somebody were to come to you with verifiable proof that conspiracy doesn't exist, you won't believe it. Because what's really happening is that you are locked in a battle of wills with yourself, but more specifically with the aspect of yourself that is set up to be that wall that says, you can't go this way, I won't let you keep working against yourself. And you've set it up so that it reacts to you. So let me talk about the universe again. The universe, even if you believe in God, if you want to choose to believe in God, God is love, God loves you. Even God, if God exists in that way, God, the universe responds to your projection. The universe doesn't know that you forgot that you're infinite. And the universe, if you want to look at it like a screen that responds to you, if you have adopted the belief that you're a victim, that you're a prisoner, that nobody loves you, you go down the list of all the negative things, if you believe those things, especially on an unconscious level, if you have chosen to believe that, then when you project that out, whether consciously or unconsciously, the universe, it receives that and goes, oh, you want to play that game? Okay, we'll do that. And then all of a sudden, sure enough, people will come and oppress you, people will come and torture you, people will come and do, or the government will do this to you, or you'll get sick, or whatever it is. It's a direct result of the universe responding to you as an infinite God and taking it as a request. So if you want to change that experience, here's what you do. You start by changing your assumption, because your assumption will determine what you project. So if you change your assumption, like I've shared with you my assumption, I believe it to be true. Everything that I've done continues to keep proving that to me in ways that are, I wish I could go into specifics, I'm not going to, but there's some stuff going on in some people close to me in their life, and there's just no way that things could have worked out the way they did if this person didn't choose to believe. And this is one of the reasons this person is in my life. This person wanted to change their reality. And everything was against this person. There was statistically no possible way this person could come out of this. And this person was attracted to me because they saw that I had this in my life. That I had this ability to decide, you know what I want? And it's not like I'm deciding arbitrarily, you know what I want. A lot of time I spend is sitting with myself and asking myself, what is it that I really want? I've gotten over the idea of being a billionaire. I've gotten over that idea. I've gotten over the idea of having stuff. I've gotten over that idea. But I'm able to decide what it is that I really want, and then when I get there and I go, that's it. That's what I want. I get to that place, I will just sometimes just out loud say, you know what I want? I want blah, blah, blah. And I don't even do it consciously a lot of times. And then it'll just happen. And it's brought to my attention, you know, you said such and such, and now you've got this. How did you get that? I'm like, I don't know. But I do know. It's because I just simply wanted it. And once I became conscious of what I truly wanted, and I became aligned on an unconscious level, and on a spiritual level, and on a mental level, then the universe goes, oh, you want that? Okay. And then you get it. But the same thing happens when you work against yourself. So anyway, I'm going round and round in circles, but you get what I'm trying to say. When you see Kali coming at you as this horrific, bony, scary, that's because you're not in alignment. You've forgotten. And that's actually your soul coming to guide you back. But the other thing about Kali is that when you see her for who she truly is, she is the most beautiful, the most loving, the most affectionate, the most amazing love in the universe. And those who have worked with Kali know what I'm talking about. But this is true. It's the same in the Germanic tradition with Hole. The goddess Hole, I would say, is Saturn. And she is seen in Germanic mythology that when you're out in the woods, because she's a nature goddess, when you're out in the woods, you see her from the front. She's this beautiful virgin in a flowing white dress, but when she turns around, she's a hollowed out dead tree. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine being out in the forest and you see this beautiful woman walking towards you, and then she turns around and all of a sudden she's this dead hollow tree? That's scary stuff. Same thing with Hela. Now Hela has a strong connection to Saturn, but she's actually I don't know. As I say that now, she's telling me that I don't know what I'm talking about, so I won't go there. But what I do know about her is that she's half corpse and half beautiful virgin. So it's the same thing. She's the queen of the underworld. And what happens when we go to the underworld? We go to work through all of our unconscious issues. And she, as I said in the last class, she loves and respects you so much that if you want to spend eternity hating yourself, she won't stop you. Not only will she not stop you, she'll sit down and just start weaving. Whatever it is, she'll just be with you. She doesn't care. She just loves and accepts you. I mean, you can see how emotional I'm getting. That's the true nature. That's what's on the other side of Saturn, is an acceptance, a peace, a love, and an awareness that is hard to comprehend. But until you're ready to give up fighting against yourself, you're going to go through whatever you're going to go through. And I struggle with wanting to pick apart. I want to analyze all of the David Icke moon matrix, Saturn matrix stuff, and I want to pick apart all, quasi-luminous, and I want to do that not because I dislike what they're saying. It's because it's like they've got 80% truth there, and then they've got 20% of their own fear projection that comes in and screws it all up. So that's part of why I want to do this. I see these things and I go, gosh, I want to talk about that. But what I really want more than anything else is I want to empower people. I want people to see themselves as I see them, which is again why I get so offended when people act beneath them, who they are, especially when they act in ways that projects self-hatred, self-limitation. That infuriates me. And it infuriates me because that they're doing it to themselves. I want to shake them out of it. Now, obviously, that's something I got to work with, because that's not the best way to treat a lot of people. But for those of you who've been my students, there are times when I just won't go there with you. Once somebody's working with me, they usually don't. But lots of times, if somebody works with me for the first time, especially if they got some major thing that they want to, and I've been in the middle of sessions, I'm like, listen, I'm not going to dance with you. I'm not going to co-sign that for you. If you want to work with me, you're going to have to own up to who you are. If you want to play that game, I'm the wrong guy. There's another teacher. There's plenty of people who will tell you what you want, who will co-sign your victimhood, who will kiss your butt in whatever way. Listen, if I wanted to start a cult, I could. I don't know if the universe would let me get away with it. My soul wouldn't. But I know exactly what to do to start a cult. Millions of followers. I know the nonsense that people want to be told to stay in their self-perpetuated, narcissistic, self-destructive crap. It'd be so easy. But I wouldn't be able to live with myself, and I want to be happy. So anyway, rambling on and on again. Let's see if there's any more questions, or we're certainly going on. We're now half an hour into it. Let me take a look at the questions here. Okay, so all right, so it kind of looks like we've come to the end of the questions. So I'm going to do some ads again. And see if I have any parting words of wisdom. And if you guys have a question you need to put out there, go ahead. So let's see. Let's just listen to Saturn a little bit now, and see if you have a different experience of Saturn. I have to laugh. Black Earth Productions. I couldn't see your comment, and I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about, and I saw my notes there, and then I realized, oh, we need to talk about time. That Saturn is time. And I looked on my on the comments, and boom. What does Black Earth Productions say? He says Saturn is time. ... So let's talk about that. Kali is also translated as time, Kala. Mahakala is the fierce form of Shiva connected to Saturn, who is also the embodiment of time. Why is judgment and karma and death and misery, why are all these things connected to time? We talked about the Aesir, and the Aesir, the celestial deities, live in a fortress of timelessness. And they hate time. They don't want time coming into their Beautiful, perfect fortress of timeless perfection. So let's talk about how is it that we die? What really kills us? Here is my belief. Take it for whatever you want to believe. I do believe that no matter what, each of us has a time frame that we've chosen to live in. We have chosen our death, the date of our death. I believe that there are potential tendencies where somebody could kind of look and see what somebody's death might be, but I don't think it's written in stone. I am of the belief that you can live your entire life up till the moment of your death in health. I don't believe that you need to die from disease. So I want to talk about old age and death. I'm 53 years old, and I don't look 25. Some people can guess my age, but under the right lights, and if I shave off all my gray hairs, some people have a hard time being able to tell how old I am. A lot of that has to do with energy. I talked about that. I talked about how when you work against yourself, how a thief actually is sapping themselves of energy because all of their life force energy is going into things like keeping lies together, fighting off guilt, running away from cops or trying not to get caught, or finding, it takes a lot of effort to be a thief. It takes a lot of effort to work against yourself. So all of that energy goes to age people. So if you've known people, especially people who have a lot of self-hatred, they look really old. There are some people I know, some people I've grown up with, who are the same age as me and older. And if you were to put the two of us together, they look 10, 15 years older than I do, 20 years older than I do. Part of the reason for that is that they don't live the same lifestyle that I do, but more importantly, on an energetic level, there's a lot of self-destructive self-hatred going on that takes up all of your energy, and that's what kills you. And so when you live in time kills you. So now let's talk about weird, W-Y-R-D. Let's talk about what our ancestral understanding of time was. Our Germanic ancestors did not believe in the concept of time like we do now. They didn't see time as linear. They believed that fate, which has a strong connection to time, was woven into existence. In fact, all of life was woven into existence by three giantesses called Norns. And the giantesses are like the Titans. And Saturn is a Titan. Kronos is a Titan. Time is a giant. Time is a Titan. And the three giantesses weave our fate. Now, understand that from a shaman's perspective, from a wizard perspective, nobody weaves my fate. I weave it. So again, when people call me on the phone for psychic readings and they ask, what's in my future? I'm going to respond like, well, what do you want to be in your future? Do you see somebody coming towards me? And I say, listen, if you want, I can take a look and see what is most likely coming for you based on the energy that you're creating right now. But you can change that. So then I give them a choice. What do you want to change that? And if they want to fight with me, just tell me what's happening. Then I go, okay. And then I'll take a look. I'll do a reading and I'll take a look and I'll say, here's what's likely coming for you. And I don't sugarcoat it. But the way that our ancestors saw the universe was that the Norns, do I have a picture of the Norns? Did I keep them on here? No, I didn't. They saw that everything came from the present, because that's all there is. Think about it. There is no past. There is no future. There is just the present. It's always going to be the present. Tomorrow will be the present. Yesterday, you experienced it as the present moment. And so our ancestors saw Verdandi, which was the ever increasing, the ever perpetual now. And from that, the past is created, which is called origins, or urd. And from the past, the future is created. And the way it works is like this. There is only the right now. And the attitudes. This is, do you hear when I talk to you, I am constantly hammering you on teaching you how to create an assumption. You have to start with an assumption. If you don't have the correct assumption, it doesn't matter what I say. It's like taking, a plate of manure and then, putting a pancake on top of it. You like to eat pancakes, but now it's on top of a plate of manure. You got to have an empty plate. And then you can put on, some great food. And then the food is good. So the assumption, if you have an assumption of self-destructiveness, self-hatred, self-sabotage, that then, even just the thought of that, thinking that way, indulging in the feeling, I was going to say feeling that way, but feelings themselves don't necessarily create anything. They're just a reaction to a thought. So that's okay. I want you to be able to feel whatever you want. Trust me, I have all kinds of feelings. I cry, I get mad, I have the same feelings everybody else does. But I don't let my feelings rule me. And I do what I can to keep the assumptions going while still being honest and real and having my feelings whatever they are. So in every moment you're creating with a thought or an intention or an attitude or an assumption, you create an energetic vibration, which immediately gets thrown into the past. That past then creates the setup for the future. That past then creates an energetic dynamic that there has to be what they call karma. It has to then create an effect. So, if I am diligent with my assumption and I create my assumption of I trust myself and I trust the universe and I trust to know, like again, that exercise of asking myself, what is it that I really want? That right there creates a really wonderful moment in the present, which then, the assumption of that says I trust the universe to give me what I want. I trust my soul to know exactly what's going to give me the most fulfillment. And I'm surrendering to that, which creates a past moment that has to be paid for in the future. And what's paid for is I get my deepest desire. Remember I told you about how I create stuff? So what I'm doing is I'm asking myself, what is it I truly want? That creates a positive, energetic stamp in the immediate past, which then has to be paid for in the future. So the future was called debt, and we would call that karma. Now you can see if a lot of people, this is a school, so a lot of souls come here to learn. They get caught up in making mistakes because that's what they're supposed to do, because you can't learn without making mistakes. One of my drum teachers said, if you're going to make a mistake, make it big, make it loud. For all you know, it could be the most brilliant drum pattern that's ever been done. Who knows? But if you're going to make a mistake, you might as well be big about it. You got to make mistakes. But you make you make mistakes, and then you got to pay for that in the future. And as long as you understand that you're creating this, you're weaving this future for yourself, then it's a pleasant experience. Now, I am firmly of the belief that if you live in the now, especially if you live in the now, well, you have to live in the now in the way that I've described. If you are angry about something that's happened to you, you're living in the past. So all of that energy that could be going to creating a really wonderful, fun future for yourself, all that energy is now going back to reinforce the past. Now here's the illusion. The illusion is that we think we're thinking about something that's already happened. When you think about somebody who did this or that to you and you're mad at them and you want to relive that, you're reliving that in the now. You're not reliving it in the past, you're reliving it in the now. And the universe that responds to the emotional indulgence of the present, the attitudes of the present, remember the universe goes, oh, you want to have somebody betray your trust like she did. Okay, we can do that. And then they create somebody else. Do you hear? That's, my ex-wife. I did that. I catch myself sometimes, my ex-wife this, and then I have to stop because I go, I don't need that. I don't want that. By the way, you can have, when it comes to love, you can have your absolute, utter fantasy. I'm just telling you. I'll have to spend a whole other thing on how to create that. So do you get where I'm going here? So it's only the now. The now becomes the past, which is then the stamp that creates the future. So what happens if you've been spending your whole life creating a bunch of nonsense, bleh, right? You keep re-stamping a bunch of nonsense. Well, you're going to have to live out some stuff. But here's the thing is, once you walk into that, challenging creation that you've, debt that you've created for yourself, the way out of it is in the present moment, regardless of what's coming at you, you put emphasis on what I talked about. What is it that I really want? I mean, what do I really want? And if you're having challenges come at you, use that as Saturn to constrict you and to put you in that prison so that you have nothing else to do except think about what it is you really want. And then what's going to happen is that over time you'll walk through that debt. And you'll have another debt, which will be really positive and wonderful, what we would call good karma. So you see, there's no victims. It's not about penance or pleasing God. It's about creating what you want and understanding that God, whatever God is out there. If you want to call God a computer, if you want to call the Matrix a computer, it's responding to what you program it to do. You programmed it. If there are evil archons keeping you from your happiness, if there are reptilians that are jumping out of your reptilian brainstem and living on Saturn and forcing you to live in a flat earth or forcing you to be going to hell forever or being possessed by demons or having the government do this, that, it's because you put it out there. You asked for it. Maybe you didn't realize you were doing it, but the universe doesn't know that. It doesn't know you don't understand that. It thinks you know that you're God. You have to educate it. A really great movie to see, what's it called? The Sphere. The Sphere. Sphere. Go see that. It's exactly what I'm talking about. Perfect example. All right, so I was talking about aging. So that aging is a result of a lack of energy. When you're not connected to life force energy, then the body starts to decompose because it's not getting the life force energy it needs. What takes away your life force energy? When you're focusing on things that take up your energy. The thief is an example. You can replace whoever you want. The thief, the liar, whatever it is. All that stuff robs you of energy because it takes a bunch of energy to keep that thing going. I'll say this last thing. The universe is also designed to keep you real and to keep you in the truth. I'll shut up with this. People who are possessed by demons are people who start off because of some trauma or tragedy. They're stuck in hatred and unforgiveness and self-hatred and all kinds of other things because of the trauma. I'm not trying to minimize the trauma. It's horrible. But because of that, they create these things, which is a false assumption that they're not loved and they're not worthy and all kinds of other things. The universe is constantly trying to throw reality at you to wake you up out of that. So you want to call it Saturn. Saturn is constantly trying to get you real so that you realize that none of those things are true. But in order to heal from that, you're going to have to go through some pain. Getting real, and especially, I talked about finding love. If you've lived a life where you haven't had true love, where you've had disappointing or sad or hurtful love experiences, in order to be able to be vulnerable to truly give to somebody and trust somebody, you're going to have to get over and face all the pain and mourn that pain. And that's very difficult. It's very challenging. It's very painful. And it takes a lot of fearlessness because you have to trust. You can't mourn unless you trust the universe will heal you. And when somebody has a trauma or a pain like that that's very difficult, then what happens is they want to be distracted from that pain. And so what they know how to do is to create more drama, more chaos. And since they're not listening to the universe, then what happens is they're sending out an unconscious request for other entities like them to come and reflect back their chaos so that they don't have to feel the pain. So that's all a demon is. A demon is another entity, whether we create it from our own unconscious, which a lot of demons are. They're just thought forms that we create. Or if it's another disembodied entity that is refusing to look at the truth because it's wrapped up in its own issues, then it's like drug addicts. They come together to feed each other's narcissistic whatever. And so you create an energetic contract with a negative entity to whatever it is, harass you, possess you, torture you. But that pain, however bad that is better than the real pain of growth and healing. That's why people become possessed. That's why people have miserable lives. Because the pain of growth is so frightening, people are afraid to take the risk. But obviously it's worth it. And listen, Saturn eventually will win. You can't win. Saturn will win. If you go up against Saturn with your limited narcissistic, self-sacrificing, self-destructive, whatever, Saturn will eventually win that fight and you will be forced to lose the lesson. That's why people who commit suicide, when they come back, whatever it is they were trying to escape is 10 times worse. And I remember reading somewhere people who jumped off some, like the Golden Gate Bridge, who survived, some bridge like that. Every single one of them said the moment their foot came off the bridge and there was no way back, they went, oh my God, I could have fixed that by doing, and they knew what the solution was. So, next time you're going to make it that much more difficult so that you're forced to get back to what this is all about. It's about you being happy and fulfilled. The other side of Saturn is peace, Shani. Shani. The other side of misery is when you surrender to your own truth. Then you no longer have to be imprisoned. So anyway, so many other things I'd love to talk about, but it's getting late for everybody. Anyway, let's see here. Yeah, Black Earth Productions is agreeing with me. Yeah, so yeah, I appreciate that. It's nice to know that that my message is landing. Okay, so there's 17 people still there on here. Great. Okay, so that's it for now. I think I'm running out of steam here. I think you guys get where I'm going with this. So I'm going to do a little bit of business before we go, which is that, yeah, I got it all in there. So just a little bit of business before we go. If you want to become an apprentice, there are multiple levels of apprenticeship. let me just say this. If you want to support this channel, then go on to thunderwizard.com and become an apprentice at whatever level you're comfortable with. That is the best way to support me because it's monthly. Monthly subscriptions are money that I can bank on, and obviously the more money I don't have to think about, bringing in, that's more time that I can put into this, coming online and talking. It seems that these longer videos are getting a lot more mileage, so I'm happy to do that. I love this. I love just ranting on and on and on and on and on and teaching. If you want to learn shamanism, go to thundershamanism.com, and when you sign up at the second or third level, whichever one gives you access to the videos, then scroll all the way to the bottom, keep hitting the more. It'll say more videos or more. Just keep hitting that button until you get to the bottom and start from the beginning. And then every week I will be bringing a 1 hour teaching about something. But that's really important, going back and starting from the beginning. That's where you really get the basis of this. I strongly suggest, if you really want the best of what I can give to you, get a Vedic astrological reading. And with a Vedic astrological reading, that gives me all kinds of information to tell you, like I said, specifics on which mantra to use, how to connect with specific deities, what ritual the planets want, if you want to work with specific planets, all kinds. I can find out how you can best present yourself to the world, which is called your aruda, or your projection. This whole thing right here is my projection, and that's what works. If you don't know what your projection is, I can find that out for you. And if you want that plus a shamanic North Star astrological reading for this year, then get the package. That will be going on for however long. When I run out of spaces, summertime slows down, so there's I have a lot more time. So this is the time to take advantage of it. Once I get back into the fall, then I start getting busy, and once I start getting busy, then people go, oh, I was just ready to. So don't wait, man. You only have one lifetime in this meat bag. Make the most of it. And that means make the most of me, because the most important thing in my life is my spare time and having fun. So take advantage of me while you can. Having said that, my friends, I am going to now take care of some personal business. So what is the last wonderful little thing I should say? The lesson of Saturn is listen. Listen to your true self. Saturn, by the way, is the planet of deep meditation. If you ever want to learn how to meditate, work with Saturn. Saturn will teach you about meditation, because again, Saturn has a lot of time. Saturn is nothing but time. And when you master Saturn, you master timelessness. So, again, listen. Listen to what you truly want. Listen to what the message is of your challenges. You can do that even if you have a physical disease. You can go in and say, okay, what is it? What is the lesson I'm trying to teach myself? What does it mean? Saturn says, listen. So with that, my friends, I will leave you with that blessing. May the grace and the honest, true friendship that Saturn gives give you the strength and the ability to listen to the deepest parts of you, so that you may not only live out your greatest fantasies in life, but be the most wonderful healing blessing to everyone that you come in contact with.